Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator. Senator, the Establishment Clause prohibits the government from establishing a religion or favoring one religion over another, correct?
Basically, yeah.
Basically, okay.
The Establishment Clause simply says that government shall not establish a religion. As you know, as they'd come out of England and other areas of Europe, and actually other areas around the world, there were government-sanctioned sects, government-sanctioned religions, even within Christianity, of course, coming out of the Church of England.
That's right, the King of England.
And so the intent was that American government, the federal government, would never be able to establish a state religion over the colonies.
That's right, because I think you just said it. The King of England persecuted people not just because they weren't following his laws, because in his mind, they may not have been following the laws of God.
Well, the First Amendment Establishment Clause, and then there's the Free Exercise Clause. And the Establishment Clause simply said that government could not ordain and establish a specific religion.
Do Hindus believe that Moses brought down the Ten Commandments?
I don't know. I would presume many of them do, and many of them may not.
Okay. There's 400,000 Hindus in Texas.
But I can tell you, every Hindu parent, I presume, would want their child to see every day: don't steal, lie, don't kill.
I don't presume anything. I'm here to make laws, not make presumptions. Do Sikhs believe that in the Ten Commandments in Texas?
I don't know. Now, what do you mean by believe in the Ten Commandments? I'm sorry.
Do Muslims believe that the Ten Commandments were brought down by God?
I think almost everybody that comes from Western civilization would recognize the history of the Ten Commandments and how that has fit into moral codes throughout the last couple of thousands of years.
That wasn't responsive to my question.
Well, I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to say that I would think that if a Hindu or anyone in any religion has studied world history, they have probably studied the significance of the Ten Commandments, as well as other moral and religious codes.
Well, like I said, I don't make presumptions. Do Buddhists, to your knowledge, believe in the Ten Commandments? I
don't know if they, and again, I would suspect they agree with the precepts of the Ten Commandments. I would expect they agree with the history and tradition of those in the United States if they have studied that.
You talk about history and about the history of the United States. You mentioned Adams. Who signs treaties with other countries?
Well, the president enters into treaties, and then the Senate affirms those treaties.
Senate ratifies them, right?
Ratifies. Thank you. That's the word.
Yes, sir. John Adams was a founding father. You mentioned him earlier, correct?
He was.
All right. And I think you cited some letter or something that he wrote to somebody, correct?
He was very, very prominent in his Christian beliefs.
Okay. Well, you heard me read a letter earlier that he sent out to a nephew talking about religion, correct?
I heard you read that, yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Treaty of Tripoli?
Yes, with the Barbary pirates.
That's right. It was signed by second President of the United States, John Adams. Not to be confused with John Quincy Adams. John Adams. You familiar with it?
Yes, but I was thinking, I may be wrong, but I thought that was Thomas Jefferson.
No,
that signed
John Adams.
The Treaty of Tripoli.
Article 11, the treaty that he signed, as the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims. Mussulman is what he said, but Muslims.
Well, that came out of the fact that in their negotiations with the Muslim nations that were really more tribes at that time and that were seizing American ships, they were justifying it under their current interpretation of what the Quran said.
Right.
And part of it became a discussion of Christianity versus Muslim, and there were discussions of whether or not American, being a Christian nation, could ever be at peace or in agreement with the Muslim nations. And if I recall, that's why that was put in that treaty.
Well, I wasn't there either, so who knows?
I'm sorry, it's been a long time since I studied the...
But it's in the treaty where a president says that our country is not based on any Christian religion.
Would you read the clause again?
Absolutely, I will. And you're right. Let's get it exactly right.
And you might read what's right before it and after it, too. That might
As
help.
the government, Article 11, this is the beginning of Article 11. And I don't want to take it out of context. As a matter of fact, I'll read the whole article. As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. This is part of our history, right, of the United States?
Yes.
Okay.
The Treaty of Tripoli is part of our history.
As it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims, and as the said states never have entered into any war of hostility against a nation, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinion shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between these two countries. I did that because you wanted to hear the whole clause, the whole article. Specifically, not in any sense founded on Christian religion. That's what the second president of the United States said.
I guess where I'm not sure what the question is. The Ten Commandments that we're proposing to put in the classrooms is based on a history and tradition of the United States and the impact that it has had on our moral and legal code.
Okay. So you're not making any suggestion that our founding fathers dictated anything different than what they put in the Constitution in the establishment clause?
No, I know that if you look at the quotes of our founding fathers, there were something like 4,000 different quotes I read where they quoted the Bible specifically. In fact, our founding fathers quoted the Bible. The top two, the Bible was quoted more than any other author or text. Behind that was Montesquieu, and I forget who was after that in terms of quotes. So by and large, the founding fathers were Christians. By and large, they recognized, I believe, at least from what I've read and the things I've read you some quotes from, recognized the significance of the Ten Commandments.
And I've heard earlier what it was Jefferson that in that letter to his nephew, what he said about God and religion.
Right, and I also recognized you were talking about the Danbury Baptists, which he wrote a letter to them because they were concerned. They'd heard rumors that there was going to be an establishment of a state religion. And he wrote them back a letter and saying no, and that's where that term wall of separation, in that letter to the Danbury Baptists, he said that our Constitution establishes a wall of separation so that the Establishment Clause can be enforced. There will never be an established government religion.
Actually, I wasn't referring to that. I think Senator Milton suggested that I was, but I wasn't. I was referring to a letter that he wrote to his nephew, Peter Carr, where he said, question with boldness even the existence of God, because if there be one, he must approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. That's what he said to his nephew in a private letter.
I'm sorry, is there a question that you wanted me to answer?
Well, I was answering you in your question as to whether I was referring to that letter that you suggested. Now, I want to ask you, because you have specific language in the bill, and I think you suggested earlier that that's the language that's out on the Capitol floor, on the steps outside, correct?
Yes, sir. It's on the monument on the north end. And the reason we chose those words, I actually started to go with a more modern translation, but because we are focused on history and tradition, I decided to go with the language that's on the Capitol grounds, which, by the way, has also already worked its way up to the Supreme Court, even under Lemon, and been approved.
We've done a couple of these different things already, and so rather than to go through my whole stack of Bibles, Senator and Mr. President and members, I do just want to point out some things. This language that you have is from the King James Version, is it not?
You know, it's not exactly King James. I was reading that over the weekend. It's a little bit different.
This is the New World Translation of the Holy Scripture here. It's used by Jehovah's Witnesses. And just to give you by way of example, it says, I am Jehovah your God who brought you to the land of Egypt over the house of slavery. That's different from your text, correct?
Yes, yes, that's a little different.
No mention of Jehovah in your text, correct?
Again, I went with the text as is on the Texas Capitol grounds and the same text that was on the that was used in Kentucky when the Supreme Court struck the ability to have the Ten Commandments in classrooms in Stone v. Graham.
I got you. Matter of fact, one of these Bibles, just to not delay us any further, one of these Bibles calls for a human sacrifice as the 10th commandment. Are you familiar with that?
I don't think that's correct.
No, we can find it.
So the Old Testament was written primarily in Hebrew, not entirely. And then so the translations we read today are English translations of that original Hebrew text. And they're all pretty similar. There's a little bit of change here and there.
Well, you don't read Hebrew, do you?
Oh, no.
No. Matter of fact, one of the first translations wasn't in Hebrew, but it was in Greek.
Well, generally speaking, the New Testament is written in Greek, not entirely, and the Old Testament is written in Hebrew, not entirely, though.
Okay. Let's see. I wanted to find that for you on that other one. Here we go. The Samaritan Pentateuch. You didn't refer to that particular Bible, did you? All right, that discusses the 10th commandment. It causes the 10th commandment demands a sacrifice to God. We're not using that one in this bill, right?
That is not in this bill.
All right, fair enough. Mr. President, I don't want to overburden the members. We're going through a stack of Bibles, but I do have two more questions, if you don't mind, Mr. President. ISDs receive money from the state of Texas.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Independent school districts receive money from the state of Texas, correct?
Yes, sir, they do.
And charter schools are wholly state funded, correct?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that this bill, and you suggested this earlier, authorizes the purchase of 10 Commandment posters using public money?
Doesn't require it. It doesn't prohibit it either.
Doesn't prohibit it. All right, very good. Mr. President, I rise to bring a point of order in that this bill violates Article 1, Section 7 of the Texas Constitution.
Bring your point of order forward. Members, the point of order is not timely, as the bill is not before the body.